The mic is hot. Let's break this down. $1 trillion. That is the number being flashed across every financial news ticker right now, like it's a high score in a video game, like it's a victory lap. Beijing just posted a record trade surplus, over $1 trillion in the first 11 months of 2025. And if you just read the headlines or listen to the talking heads in the expensive suits, you'd think China is unstoppable. You'd think the Trump tariff wall failed. You'd think they are winning. But can we just stop? Seriously, can we turn off the noise for a second and look at what is actually happening? Because that number, that $1 trillion surplus, it isn't a flex. It's not a sign of strength. It is a scream. It is the economic equivalent of a Mayday signal. Think about it. A trade surplus means you sold way more than you bought. Sounds great for a lemonade stand, right? But for the second largest economy on Earth, when you have 1 billion people and you're selling everything you make to foreigners because your own people aren't buying anything, that's not success. That is starvation. I'm looking at the data right here, released December 8th. Look at this. November exports, booming, but imports, barely a heartbeat, a pathetic 1.9% growth. Do you know what that tells me? It tells me the Chinese consumer is dead in the water. They are tapped out. The factories are humming, churning out EVs, solar panels, gadgets, whatever, but nobody in Shanghai or Beijing can afford to buy them. So they have to dump them. They have to shove them onto ships and send them to Europe, to Australia, to Southeast Asia. And here is the part that should make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Exports to the U.S. dropped nearly 30% last month. The tariffs are biting. The door to America is closing. So where does that mountain of stuff go? It doesn't disappear. It floods everywhere. Why should you care? If you're sitting in Ohio or Florida or Texas, why does it matter if Beijing has a warehouse full of unsold goods? Because desperate countries do desperate things. When an economy can't feed itself from the inside, it becomes aggressive on the outside. We are watching a cornered animal try to export its way out of a coma. They are rerouting trade routes. They are pivoting to the global south. They are practically giving things away just to keep the lights on in the factories. Because if those factories close, if those workers hit the streets, that is the one thing, the only thing Beijing is truly terrified of. So don't let the record surplus headline fool you. This isn't a boom. It's a bust disguised as a windfall. And the fallout from this? It's coming for your wallet, it's coming for global stability, and it is going to be messy. You want to know how a superpower collapses? It doesn't explode. It starves. Let me show you the receipts. Let me take you back to a simpler time. Remember 2015? The deal between the US and China was simple. It was like a toxic but functional marriage. America provided the credit card, and China provided the stuff. We bought the flat-screen TVs, the cheap patio furniture, and the fast fashion. They took our dollars, built massive cities, and promised that one day, eventually, their own people would get rich enough to buy stuff from us. That was the deal. Chimerica. It worked until it didn't. So what happened? What broke the machine? Well, two things hit at the exact same time. First, the real estate bubble in China didn't just pop. It evaporated. You have to understand, for the average family in Shanghai or Shenzhen, their life savings weren't in the stock market. They were in an apartment, maybe two. When Evergrande and Country Garden collapsed, it wiped out the perceived wealth of an entire generation. Suddenly, nobody feels rich. Nobody is buying a new car. Nobody is upgrading their phone. They are hoarding cash like it's the apocalypse. That is why imports are only up 1.9%. That number isn't a statistic. It's a pulse check, and the patient is barely breathing. Then, the second hammer dropped. Donald Trump came back. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, this is just politics. Tariffs are just a tax. No, stop. This isn't a tax. It's a blockade. The average tariff on Chinese goods entering the U.S. is now sitting at 47.5%. That is not a margin adjustment. That is a do not enter sign. The result? Exports to the US crashed 29% in November alone. The single biggest customer in the history of the world just stopped buying. But wait, I hear the contrarians screaming. China's GDP is still growing. They're at 5%. Let's be real. If you build a bridge to nowhere, your GDP goes up. If you build a factory that makes solar panels nobody buys, your GDP goes up. China is currently faking growth by building things nobody needs. They are overproducing EVs, steel, and batteries because the local governments have to keep people employed. If they stop the factories, the unemployment riots start. So they're stuck. They have millions of tons of high-tech gear that Americans won't buy and Chinese citizens can't afford. This brings us to the master plan, the pivot. Xi Jinping is looking at the map and saying, fine, if America won't buy our stuff, we'll sell it to everyone else. And the numbers back this up. Exports to Australia, up 35.8%. Exports to Europe, up 14.8%. They are flooding the global south, Africa, and Latin America with cheap goods. It sounds like a genius move, right? Just swap customers. Wrong. This is the false hope. This is the trap. Because Europe isn't Walmart. Australia isn't Amazon. These markets are smaller. And, more importantly, they are protective. Do you really think Germany is going to sit back and watch their auto industry get wiped out by cheap Chinese EVs just because America closed the door? China is trying to plug a specifically American-sized hole in their economy with countries that are already full. They are force-feeding the rest of the world to choke on their excess production. And that is where the real danger begins. Because when you force-feed an economy, eventually it throws up. The Global South strategy isn't a solution. It's a delay tactic, and the clock is running out. All right, pull up a chair. We need to get into the weeds here. I want to explain exactly how this $1 trillion surplus is actually happening. Because it's not as simple as China makes stuff, we buy stuff. The plumbing of the global economy is getting repiped in real time, and it is messy. To understand this, I need you to imagine a neighborhood, a strict HOA. Let's call the HOA president Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam puts up a massive fence and says, no goods from House China allowed, period. So what does House China do? Do they stop making cookies? No, they make more cookies. But instead of walking them to Uncle Sam's front door, they walk next door to House Vietnam and House Mexico. They hand the cookies over the backyard fence, swap the wrapper, slap a Made in Vietnam sticker on it, and then House Vietnam walks them to Uncle Sam's door. That is the game. It's called transshipment, or as I like to call it, the global laundromat. Look at the numbers again. Exports to ASEAN countries, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, are up 8.2%. Do you really think the Vietnamese suddenly need 8% more Chinese steel and electronics for themselves? No, they are acting as the middleman. They are the cutout. China is washing the origin of its goods through Southeast Asia to dodge the American tariff wall. But here's the catch. Here is the mechanism that is going to break everything. This laundromat strategy, it only works for so long. The U.S. customs officials aren't stupid. They have satellites. They track shipping containers. They know exactly what is happening. And when Washington decides to close that loophole, and they will, that 8.2% safety valve shuts off. And this brings us to the catch-22. This is the part where you almost feel bad for the technocrats in Beijing. They are trapped in a nightmare of their own making. Here's their dilemma. Option A, they stop the factories. They admit that the world doesn't want this much stuff. They let the zombie companies go bankrupt. Result? Mass unemployment. We're talking about tens of millions of angry, young, military-aged men with no jobs. For the Chinese Communist Party, that is an existential threat. That is how revolutions start. Option B. They keep the machines running. They double down. They subsidize the losses. They keep producing steel, cars, and solar panels at a loss just to keep people employed. Result? They have to dump those goods somewhere. If the US is closed and the laundromat gets shut down, they have to force feed Europe, South America, and India. They picked option B, obviously. They chose survival today over disaster tomorrow.
Wait, let me back up. I want to look you in the eye for this part. I know this sounds like just business. I know it sounds like boring supply chain stuff. But you have to understand the scale of this. We have never, in the history of human commerce, seen a country this big try to export 100% of its overcapacity. It's like a pressure cooker. The domestic demand in China is the safety valve. It's broken. It's welded shut. So the pressure, the goods, the capital, the desperation is building up. And here is the domino effect. This is what keeps me up at night. When China floods Europe with cheap EVs, and I mean cheap, like half the price of a Volkswagen, what happens? Germany panics. Their auto industry is their bloodline. So Europe slaps on tariffs. Then China pivots to Brazil. Brazil's factories can't compete, so Brazil slaps on tariffs. Then India, then Turkey. Do you see the pattern? The free trade world is turning into a fortress world. Every country starts building walls to protect their own factories from the Chinese flood. And when there is nowhere left to sell, when the warehouses are full, and the ports are blocked, and the laundromat is closed, that is the point of no return. That is when China has to pull the final lever, the nuclear option of economics, currency devaluation. They will crash the yuan. They will make their money worth so little that their goods become irresistibly cheap. Tariffs be damned. They will export deflation to the entire planet. Your prices at the store might go down, sure, but so will your wages. So will your 401k. It's a race to the bottom, and right now, Beijing is greasing the slide. The system isn't just bending, folks. It's snapping, and we are all standing in the blast zone.
So where does this train wreck actually end? We've looked at the death spiral numbers. We've mapped out the laundromat loopholes. Now, I need you to look forward. I need you to understand what happens when this $1 trillion bubble finally bursts, because it will. Gravity always wins. Let's play out the scenarios. And I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I'm not seeing a lot of rainbows here. Scenario 1, the miracle pivot. The best case. This is the scenario every economist on Wall Street is praying for. In this version of reality, Beijing wakes up tomorrow and realizes the game is up. They look at that $1 trillion surplus and say, you know what? We can't keep force-feeding the world. So they do the one thing they have refused to do for 20 years. They give the money to their own people. They create a massive social safety net. They boost wages. They let the Chinese worker actually buy the things they make. If this happens, the surplus evaporates. The trade war cools down. The global economy rebalances. It's the soft landing. But let me tell you why this is a fantasy. Doing that requires the Chinese Communist Party to give up control. It means empowering the consumer, empowering the private sector, and taking money away from the state-owned giants. Xi Jinping has spent the last 10 years doing the exact opposite. He isn't going to democratize the economy just to make Emmanuel Macron or Donald Trump happy. So you can scratch scenario 1 off your bingo card. It's not happening.
Scenario 2, the fortress world. The ugly truth. This is where we are heading. Fast. The US has already slammed the door. That's done. Next, Europe will follow. They have no choice. If they don't, their industries die. Then you're going to see a global fracture. The world splits into two distinct economic blocks. Block A, the US, North America, parts of Europe, and key allies like Japan and Australia. This bloc becomes a high-cost, high-security zone. Things will get more expensive here. We will make more stuff at home, but we won't have access to the dirt-cheap goods we got used to. Bloc B: China, Russia, Iran, and the desperate parts of the global south that have to take Chinese money. This bloc becomes the dumping ground for Chinese excess. And in the middle, chaos. We're looking at a world where global trade, as we knew it, the idea that you can buy anything from anywhere, is dead. The vision, 2030. Close your eyes for a second. Imagine it's 5 years from now, 2030. You walk into a store. You pick up a toaster, or a phone, or a pair of sneakers. First thing you notice, the price tag. It's higher, maybe 20% higher. Why? Because it wasn't made in a sweatshop in Guangdong anymore. It was made in Mexico, or Vietnam, or maybe even, shockingly, South Carolina. The supply chains are shorter, but the costs are real. But here's the other side of 2030. You turn on the news. China is going through what Japan went through in the 90s, but on steroids. The lost decade. Massive ghost cities. Factories rusting over. A currency that has cratered. The China price is gone because the China model is broken. The global economy will feel smaller. It will feel more tense. Every shipping lane will be patrolled by navies because trade is no longer just business. It's national security. So, what do? I know, this is heavy. It feels like I'm telling you the sky is falling. But here is the good news. You can prepare. You don't have to be a victim of this. Stop betting on cheap. If your business model or your household budget relies on things staying dirt cheap forever, you need to adjust. The era of deflationary, cheap Chinese goods is ending. Prices are going to stabilize at a higher level. Build that buffer into your life now. Watch the yuan. This is your canary in the coal mine. If you see headlines that China is devaluing their currency aggressive, that is the signal. That means the trade war has gone hot. That means market volatility is coming. Don't panic sell your 401k, but maybe don't bet the farm on risky international stocks that rely on China. Invest in resilience. Look at where the money is going. It's flowing out of China and into places like Mexico, India, and the U.S. domestic manufacturing sector. If you are looking for a job or looking to invest, look at the sectors that are reshoring: logistics, automation, domestic energy. That is where the growth is for the next 10 years. Tune out the noise. The headlines are going to get scary. Trade war escalates. China retaliates. Remember this: the U.S. economy is robust. We are the consumer of last resort. We hold the cards. China needs us way more than we need them. We might have to pay a few bucks more for a blender, but they are fighting for their economic survival. Keep your head on a swivel, but don't let the fearmongers paralyze you. Look, the $1 trillion surplus isn't a badge of honor for Beijing. It's a tombstone for the old world order. We are watching the end of an era. The Chimerica marriage is over, and the divorce proceedings are getting ugly. But you're smart. You're informed. You see the board. While everyone else is distracted by the flashy numbers, you know the truth. The giant isn't roaring. It's gasping. Stay safe, stay skeptical, and keep watching the flows. I'll catch you on the next one.